Good morning, everybody in the West Coast. I guess it's not the morning in the East Coast, but welcome to the sixth live stream of Reef Automation. Today we have a lot that I'm going to go over. Not 100% going to be Apex related or Neptune related stuff. We're going to go into a little more advanced stuff that I do in my house and go over some questions regarding some other automation type systems. But it should be fun. So thank you everybody that's in. Jessica, Ben, Timothy, JCS Reefing, Joe Little, Aaron's Aquaculture, Ben, Benton, first timer, says, thanks for everybody coming this morning. Like I said, it's going to be a good one. I'm going to be giving away a $50 gift card to Bulk Reef Supply at the end. So just to remember for the new people that you need to stay till the end because that's when I give out the gift card. And you have to say something in the chat and you have to ask me a reef automation question to be entered into the contest. Brian, what's going on, buddy? Hatfield's Reef. How's it going? So today, I had a little stream this week, and I went over a number of. I'm sorry, I had a stream this week, and people were asking about calcium reactors, and um, specifically how I'm doing my calcium reactor, how I've done calcium reactors in the past. I did a little video. Probably, I don't know, 2 weeks ago on how to program a calcium reactor. So we're going to kind of go over that a little bit. We're going to go over my calcium reactor and how it works and how automatic calcium reactors work, and why they tend to be a little more expensive than, let's say, just a standard calcium reactor. But yeah, I look forward to showing you guys some cool stuff. We're gonna go over Ecotech a little bit, Ecotech marine products. We're gonna go over how I integrate them into my Neptune systems stuff. So yeah, it should be fun. Let me put some of your guys' names in to the pot here so I don't forget. Uh, so Ben's first question of the day is how I'm adding a energy bar to one I have already. Can't seem to find the switches for my second bar. Adding a second bar. Switches for your second bar. Well, you should have outlets. I think that's what you meant. Um, and Ben, I can show you kind of where that'll show up. Maybe that'll help you. Oh, here goes Aaron Johnson with the jokes. Okay, give me a second to switch over here, and I will show Ben some stuff. So when you add any type of module, you want to go to your gear icon here, Ben, and you want to go to this guy right here. This will show you all of your modules on the system. It'll show the status of them as well. It's possible that your energy bar either doesn't have the latest firmware, which is why it's not showing up, or it's not showing up in this list. If you don't see this if you don't see it in this list, then more than likely it's not hooked up properly. Um, Timothy, that's a good idea. Maybe restart your Apex. That might bring it back up. But just I would go in there and check and see if it's not showing up in there. That would be my first guess. So I'd try that. All right. So any questions before we start? Because we're going to go over quite a bit here. Mr. Johnson. So I'm going to call you Mr. Johnson because we have two Aarons. I could call you Pain in the Ass Johnson. Is that okay? Pain in the Ass Johnson and Good Aaron or Better Aaron. So I'm waiting for my new tank and I'm very new to reefing aside from a new ATO. What would you suggest the next thing I should look into for automating? So Joe, I think what I show you today would be the next step in automating. We're going to go over some specific automation that I use, and that might be the best. Nice job, Desert Reef Aquatics. I know that's you, Aaron Johnson. You think you're smart, but I'm smarter. What's up, Vinny? Vinny won, I think, last week. How you liking your? What did I send you? I forgot. I sent you some flipper magnets, I believe. Um, So yeah, Desert Reef Aquatics, for all that don't know, because he bothers me on a daily basis, is an Instagram from Aaron Johnson, and he's the one that built my aquarium, the 300. He did all of the paneling for the doors and installed the doors on them. He also installed my all my cabinetry and most of my plumbing in the. Actually, he did the plumbing. I'm sorry, on the both tanks, the 300 and the 100 that I have. So, Desert Reef Aquatics here in Arizona. That's Aaron Johnson, and I'm giving him a shout out because he bothers me all the time about it. Um, so that's Aaron Johnson, Desert Reef Aquatics. That's your shout out for the day, and no more shout outs. So let's see. What was I doing? Oh yeah. So calcium reactors. We're gonna go over calcium reactors first. Then I'm gonna go over some Ecotech marine stuff, and then I'm gonna go over Samsung Smartthings. Um, so I'll explain kind of how I use everything with my system and why I use everything for certain things. So for those that don't know, I have a aquarium engineering calcium reactor. I went over this in previous streams. Um, and at this point in time, which has been about 3 or 4 days or so, I've had it running and it is fantastic. I know that I had a couple issues in the beginning, and the owner of Aquarium Engineering, we figured out that there indeed was something wrong with my calcium reactor controller. So the controller is this box right here. This is the actual reactor, of course. The controller controls how the reactor works, which is very different than your standard calcium reactor, which requires a controller for you to purchase. This actually comes with it. Um, so we figured out that there was something wrong with my controller. Now, it could have been from water damage from the beginning when I had plugged it in and there was a small leak inside and it damaged the solenoids inside. I don't know. I'm waiting to find out what was actually wrong with it. But he sent me a new controller, and it's been running fantastic. So I'm very happy with it. I'm going to explain how it works, and I think you'll see why I spent the extra money on this for a specific reason and why I think it's worth it. Um, why is there such a delay when I open my cabinet door for lights to come on? I don't know, Hatfield's Reef. What are you using for your cabinet door? Maybe I can answer your question then. I don't know. Um, as for yeah, let me see. So yeah, we're gonna go over the calcium reactor. I'm just looking at the chat here. Um, before we go on, I was going to mention Mr. Aaron's aquaculture. So we have Aaron Johnson from Desert Reef Aquatics, and we have Aaron's aquaculture. Both of my buddies. And before we go on, I wanted to go over something. So a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned that I was using a liter meter to swap water with my nano tank, which is sitting next to me, with my 100, so that they would share the water. But what we ended up happening is we had some issues with the water level on the nano, and what was happening is the nano would get too high because a liter meter, one of them was for some reason not putting out enough water than the other one, so the levels were uneven. So what Aaron did is a really cool thing. We decided to change everything up, and we put a high sensor and a low sensor and a medium sensor in the nano. And now what's happening in the nano is there's a sensor at which the water level comes to, and then it drops the water level back, and it does that every 5 minutes throughout the whole day, and it's working fantastic. So I wanted to again thank Aaron for the idea and thank Aaron for explaining how we could do this. So again, if you ever want to do a water exchange or an auto water change with two tanks so they continue to have the same water, my suggestion is to put sensors on one of them and then bring water to that top sensor and stop it, and bring water to the bottom sensor and stop it. And that's been working great. And I'd have that every single I have that literally every 5 minutes. So my Nano and my 100 share the same water at all times. I don't have to do any water changes. I don't have to do any water testing on my Nano because it's always the same water as the 100. Let's see, Brian, what's going on? I added more remag mags on my cow. I'm up to 30% now, and even up to feed pump. My elk went up, down. I'd rather not dose if possible. What kind of automation are you putting on your new tank? Okay, that's for someone else. Okay, so Brian, that's a really good question, and I'm going to go over kind of how the remag works. But I have kind of the similar issue, but on the opposite end. I have too much magnesium going in. So what happens is that remag actually requires a lower pH to start melting in comparison to your reborn or your calcium reactor media. And that's the reason why your mag is probably not stabilizing, because you actually need a lower pH for the remag to actually start working properly. And I found that out when I was installing this calcium reactor. Is this calcium reactor lowers the pH inside so low that it burns the media at almost the exact same rate as the reborn media, and found that my magnesium is starting to rise. So if we go back over to here, you will see that I had this very specific rise here, and it went up to about, here's a 1392, and now you can see it's kind of leveling off a little bit more because I removed some of it. So you have to make sure that your pH is a little normal than standard, and if it's still not working, put more remag in there. Just keep throwing remag in there until you get it stable. So that would be my best suggestion for you. So Jessica, the Nano is so small, it's like 7 gallons. I'm sure you guys have seen it. Cleaning the sand takes about 2 minutes. So yeah, I mean I could clean the sand, but it's black sand, so you could barely tell if it's dirty anyways. But yeah, I clean it like every, I don't know, month or so. The glass, of course, gets dirty, so I have to clean the glass here and there. So anyway, so we'll go over the calcium reactor. So this particular calcium reactor is an automatic calcium reactor, which isn't your standard calcium reactor. So how this actually works is it's got a recirculating pump right here, which is on the left side here, that's constantly recirculating. And what it does is there's a little float sensor on the top here, and you can probably see it right here. And that float sensor, as the water gets into the reactor, the float sensor manages how much CO2 gets into the reactor. And how that works is all day long, this calcium reactor is constantly spitting out a certain amount based on the controller, which we'll go over in a second. And the CO2 then gets injected into the water based on this float switch up here. So as you can see, there is nothing else that needs to be done with this calcium reactor. I went over this last live stream. People were asking, well, how do you manage your pH? How do you manage your calcium reactor? How do you program your calcium reactor with an Apex Neptune? I don't. It's just you just plug in the controller, which is right here. And I plug in the controller to my Apex, and what I can do is I can kill the controller if my alkalinity gets too high. I can kill the controller if the pH gets too low. I could do just about anything with this controller based off of just an outlet. But there is no more programming other than that. It's just an on and off. And if you go to my Apex, you'll see all I have is a calcium reactor outlet. That's it. I don't have anything else. So how this works is there's a top number here and there's a bottom number right here. The top number is how long you want it to dose the effluent for, and the bottom number is how long you do not want to dose the effluent for. And it works off of an oscillation. And we went over kind of what an oscillator was last time I spoke. But what it does is basically it turns on, it spits out water, then turns off. Then spits out water, turns off. And it just keeps doing that over and over again. And you manage how much time you want it to actually be on and how much time you want it to be off. And in doing so, you don't have to manage the CO2. You don't have to manage the effluent output. You don't have to put a needle valve. You don't have to do anything. You plug this in and you set the parameters for the on and off, and you manage your alkalinity, and that's it. There's nothing more to this. So like I said, I've been very happy with it since we got the new controller, and I really have been very happy with how easy it is to do. You just plug it in, and there's really nothing more to it. So any questions on the aquarium engineering calcium reactor? Again, I'm going to go through a regular calcium reactor next, but I just wanted to go over what an automatic calcium reactor is and how it works. There are a couple manufacturers out there that make them, mostly in Germany, and they're double or 3 times the price of this. So just note that if you're looking at an automatic calcium reactor, you're going to be spending between $1,500 to $2,000 on it, and that's pretty standard for an automatic reactor. What would you suggest, run a calcium versus 2-part? And I think that's a good question, Ben. So I think Aaron's Aquaculture will chime in on this too. So my suggestion is to get a calcium reactor. I always believe the calcium reactor is the best solution for any aquarium. Now you don't have to get an automatic one. We're going to go over the cheaper and the more standard option of doing a calcium reactor. But the automatic one, when it says automatic, it really means automatic. You don't do anything. So if you're the type of person like me who has 3 fish tanks and has to work and has to leave the house and doesn't want to worry about anything, get this. What this will do for you is this will basically let you set and forget. You don't have to touch it ever again. Once you plug it in and let it go, you don't touch it. So my suggestion would be go this route if you can afford it. In terms of this being in comparison to dosing, there's a big issue. So dosing, what's nice about dosing is it's going to give you your trace elements, it's going to give you your alkalinity, it's going to give you your calcium all in one shot. The nice thing about dosing also is generally your alkalinity content will keep your pH at a higher level. So you usually get about 8.2, 8.3 on a dosing type system. The drawbacks of having a calcium reactor is you do not get the trace elements. I have done multiple tests on the ICP, and you get strontium and you get I forgot the other element, but you get something. Well, you get magnesium if you add the magnesium media. So you don't get the trace elements that you need, even though Reborn touts that you'll get trace elements, you don't. So you have to dose with trace elements. So that's why I have a doser and I'm dosing Tropic Marin trace elements to compensate. So the one thing that you have to realize with a calcium reactor is you do not get trace elements, which are essential to the corals, specifically iodine. I've had to start dosing manually iodine because the calcium reactor does not provide that to me. So the biggest difference between dosing and your calcium reactor, like I said, is going to be your trace elements specifically. The other big issue is pH. So my pH this morning is 7.83. So unfortunately, my calcium reactor, while I've been reading and I've been speaking to the owner, I've been talking to multiple people, over time, this calcium reactor is supposed to help with pH. You can see how low my pH is by using a calcium reactor. So always be aware that if you do a calcium reactor, your pH is going to drop. So that's another reason that I guess, a con to doing a calcium reactor. So the pros of the calcium reactor, Ben, are automatic. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to fill up containers. You don't have to buy. You don't have to buy gallons of liquid. This thing just does it for you. If you have a very high demand tank, such as my tank, I think calcium reactor is your best bet, because otherwise you're going to be buying gallons and gallons of liquid and consistently filling them to keep the tank going. So that's my opinion on that. So Jessica, what are the guidelines for the on and off time? So it's a good question. I'm still kind of tuning it in. Mine has been pretty stable, if you can see here, 8.3-ish, 8.4-ish. I'm still kind of tuning it in, but generally the on time obviously will give you more alkalinity than the off time. So I would say I don't really know the general guidelines. You kind of have to monkey with it over time. But I've got it pretty close. I got the on time at 1 second and the off time at about 160 seconds or so. It cost me $1,500. Do you think it's worth going automatic instead of standard? Vinny, I think I answered that question. Let's see, how easy would it be able to dose calc with a dose pump? So I went over the other time, we had a conversation about this. I don't like calc. I don't like calc dosing. I don't like calc dipping, dose or dropping, whatever, because I feel that it's not automatic enough for me. And what I mean by that is if I put a tablespoon of calc into a gallon of water, and I always put that tablespoon of calc into that water, and I'm always dripping at a specific rate, technically I should always have the same alkalinity. However, in my testing and how I've done things, it seems to never be accurate or perfect. I mean, you could have that tablespoon off by a little bit, you know. I really believe that kalkwasser dosing is a thing of like 20, 40 years ago, and I don't know. I could dose calc, but I'd have to do it off of an evaporation, which my tank doesn't evaporate enough, and then I'd have to tune in my calcium reactor. I just think it's just too much work to get everything working. If you could get your calcium reactor dialed in perfectly and your pH stays about 8 to 8.1, I think you're doing a pretty good job with your calcium reactor. If it gets a lot of likes, I'll do a video with him building and reprogramming. Okay, that's news to me. I kind of do agree on larger systems where you'd be dosing unbelievable. Yeah, so that's another thing, Aaron. Like I said, if you have a lot of SPS coral, the consumption rate is going to be so high that dosing just economically isn't the right way to go. And if you do the calculations of how much you spend on the dosing equipment and all of the liquids that you need, the mag or in the 123 or whatever you use, if you multiply that over a year span and how much you're going to use, you're already going to be up to the same amount of money as the calcium reactor. And again, the calcium reactor you don't touch. So I think for any size tank, a calcium reactor is a good investment because you can dial them down so small that you can work at. I wouldn't think a nano would do okay in a calcium reactor, but you could dial them so low that you can, even with a couple SPS and maybe a clam or something, that calcium reactor will do fine in like a 30-gallon tank anyways. Let's see. How do you all increase the pH from the effluent lines? So I assume, Suraj, you're talking about the calcium reactor. So I am in the process of doing a secondary chamber to see if that works. Now, what a secondary chamber is supposed to do is, as the effluent goes through an additional media, you will get a higher pH. I don't know if that's going to work, but there's really no other way to do it other than they call it degassing, and there's different devices out there that will degas. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find something that will properly degas. Another thing you do with the effluent is dump it into a refugium. So you're feeding your Cato CO2. If any of you are familiar with planted tanks, that's how planted tanks grow. So another way of doing or raising the pH is dumping the effluent of the calcium reactor into a refugium, which is how I do it, and that seems to help. Again, I'm struggling with pH, and I've always struggled with pH. I don't know if it's my new reactor takes a couple weeks to kind of start working to higher or get the pH higher, or there's something I'm doing wrong to make the pH so low right now. Um, what's up, producer Reef? Um, Ben, I believe the 123 is by far superior to the two-part from BRS. And there's one reason why. It's based off of the balling method. And if you read about the balling method, you will know that it's continuously giving the exactly correct ratio of all of your elements, including trace elements. So I really, really believe in the Aquaforest 123 in comparison to any two-part. Hi to Derek's dog. Yeah, sorry about that. Someone rang the doorbell. Let's see. I wish I asked, how is your calcium working after the new controller? It's working great. Like I said, I do have a low pH issue, so I have to work with tinkering with it a little bit to see if I can get that pH to rise. But right now my pH is really low. It's about 10 a.m. and my lights haven't come on yet. But my pH is roughly 7.8 to 7.9 right now. I have a CO2 scrubber. I have just about everything you can think of to raise my pH. So we're still working on it. The controller's only been working for about 4 days now. So from what I'm being told, it can take a month or two to really stabilize the pH inside the reactor. So I'm just going to give it some time. Um, let's see. All right. So that's the automatic calcium reactor. That's how it works. I would recommend it if you can spend the money on it. It makes your life a lot easier. I have found it to be, now that I have a new controller, I have found it to be so easy. I don't touch it. I don't even have to worry about it. Again, I'm still kind of tuning it, but once it's tuned in perfectly, I'm never going to have to touch it. So that's the automatic calcium reactor. So the next thing we're going to go over is just a regular calcium reactor, which is going to save you about a quarter of the money of what I just talked about. So a standard calcium reactor will have a pH probe in it, which is this guy right up top here. This port right here, you run a standard pH probe into your Apex or any controller, and what you do is you program the solenoid or the CO2 going in to turn off and on depending on the pH within the reactor. Now, some of you that are on here probably have a calcium reactor or have used a calcium reactor and understand how it works. So the problem, or not the problem, the drawback of this design is you have to have a solenoid consistently turning on and off to monitor the pH inside here. Whereas the automatic calcium reactor does it for you. There is no pH probe, there is no controller, you just plug it in. So that's the biggest difference between this and the calcium reactor here, is that the controller here is doing all the work for you. Whereas this guy, you need to buy the calcium reactor, you need to buy a pH probe, and you need to buy a controller, and you need to monitor the pH, and you need to monitor the effluent flow, and you need to monitor the. There's a lot to a regular calcium reactor. They usually come with a little needle valve, and that needle valve will give you the amount of drip rate, and it's 24/7. Whereas this calcium reactor, like I said, turns on and off based on these numbers here. I hope that made sense. You put the pH probe. I usually say about an inch above the media. That's where you would want it to stay there. Um, so pH probe, you're going to need for this unit, you're going to need a controller, you're going to need some type of feed pump, whether it's off of a manifold, whether it's own feed pump. There also, you can use Versa, for instance. You can use any type of peristaltic pump to push through the calcium reactor, and you can adjust the rate at which it pushes through. Whereas the automatic one, which I went over, you just feed water into it. There's nothing more to it. You don't have to adjust the flow rate. You don't have to adjust anything. So I wanted to just mention the carbon doser. It's a specific regulator that is electronic. Most of the solenoids out there are mechanical. So just be aware that this, while it's $350, has an electronic solenoid in here. This is the best regulator there is. And why I like it so much is you can have this thing turn off and on as many times as you want, and it will never break. I had this carbon doser on my tank for 4 years, and I had this thing turning off about every 15 seconds to maintain a consistent pH. Instead of having a range of pH inside my calcium reactor of like 6.7 to 6.8, I had this thing pegged at 6.6, and it was always 6.6. So what's nice about this carbon doser guy here is you can peg your you can peg um, your pH inside the reactor to a specific pH instead of a range of pH, and it gives you a much more clear um, it gives you a much more known effluent at all times. So I highly recommend this regulator, and I just wanted to show you guys it. Um, so Scott, you can use a pH pen to test the effluent. However, you need a controller to turn off and on the solenoid for the calcium reactor. Unless you're going to go over there with a pH pen and sit there all day and monitor it, you need something that's going to turn off the CO2, and that's why you have to have a pH probe. Every single calcium reactor that has ever been made has a pH probe input. Now, of course, you could take the effluent and you could put that into a bucket first and then have a pH probe in there and then have the effluent go into the tank. But you need to have something that monitors what that pH is. So you do have to have a controller and you do have to have a pH probe. So any questions on calcium reactors, regular calcium reactors, automatic ones? Um, I just wanted to kind of run through a regular calcium reactor and how it works. There's so many videos on how a calcium reactor works. But I just wanted to go over that the automatic calcium reactor does not require any controller, doesn't require a pH probe, doesn't require anything. So, hope that all made sense. Let's see if we have any other questions that I didn't get to. Let's see if I've entered everybody. 1, 2, 3. So we only have 9 people in the contest. So either people haven't been asking questions or they have not entered the contest. We need 10 people in order for this contest to go through. So we need at least one more person. I know there's 16 people on here, so I'm not sure if those other people don't want to be in the contest or don't know the rules. So if you're not sure what the rules are and you are in the stream right now, just look at the comments and it'll explain what the contest rules are. And I do this for 2 reasons. I do this because it allows me to see everybody in the chat, and it allows me to put your names in. So I don't do it. It's more so I don't forget that you're in the contest. So I just want to let you guys know. And I do want you guys asking questions because unfortunately I can't speak for an hour straight. I get tired. So I like to be able to answer some questions. Okay, so the next thing we're going to go over is Ecotech Marine. Specifically how it's programmed and kind of what's around right now. There's a lot of talk about different things, and I want to set the record straight of the reasoning why certain people are doing certain things and how things will integrate with other things. Producer Reef, I think you should add a calcium reactor right at the beginning. Again, you can tune that thing down really low in the beginning. A cycled tank, you could just turn off the calcium reactor while it's cycling, but I suggest setting it up, getting it going, getting it ready. The water inside the calcium reactor can stay still because it has a recirculating pump inside. So you could turn off the effluent and just have that calcium reactor running until you're ready to start dosing. So yes, I think if you have the money, buy it as soon as possible. Just like any dosing pump or dosing. Okay, so this is Reeflink. So this is under EcoSmart Live. Now, let me, Daniel, let me add you. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. Um, Timothy, we're going to go over that here in a second. So the how do I put this? So Apex sells what's called a WXM, which I went over last week. The WXM allows you to control the Vortec pumps and allows you to control the Radion lights. It allows you specifically to control the Radion Generation 1 through the Generation 4. And it lets you also only control the Vortec pumps that have the Wi-Fi chip in them. For those that have been in the hobby for a long time, when Ecotech came out with pumps, they were not wireless in the beginning. So just keep in mind that if you get a WXM from Neptune, now again, the WXM controls the Ecotech devices through the Neptune instead of through like a Reeflink or a Mobius, which we're going to go over. So again, generation 1 through 4 Radions have the chip inside, and Vortex that have the wireless badge on them, they'll have a little W on them. You can control the WXM. So anything beyond that, Neptune can't control. It can't control it in any fashion other than power. You can only turn it off and on. Um, so I think in the future, I don't know if Neptune's going to make another WXM that's a Wi-Fi version, because right now all of the Vectra pumps that have been made in the beginning have the same chip that the generation, the ones I just spoke about, the Vortex and um, the Radions. The newer Vectras that they came out with, the twos, um, some of them have the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth chip, which can be controlled with Mobius and Reeflink. Um, and the new Generation 5 Radeon has the Wi-Fi chip. None of us really know if it has the Bluetooth chip inside. I've spoke to them, and every time I've spoke to them, they've told me it does not, which would mean that the Reeflink is no longer going to be used. They're going to continuously use the Mobius, and the Mobius runs off of Wi-Fi. So just keep that in mind. Um, with the Reeflink system, you can basically control everything from the pumps. You can control all the setups. You can control the program schedule. So this is my 300. I have 3 Vectras on it. I can control the left pump. I can control the right pump. I really don't do much with them, as you can see. I just keep them on at all times. Um, so to answer your question, Producer Reef, the Mobius does not run off of Bluetooth on their newer products. It runs off of Wi-Fi, and that's going to all change. Right now, Mobius is still in its early adoption stage. So at some point, Mobius is going to control everything, and then it will be able to do Bluetooth, and then it will be able to do everything else. But it currently runs to control everything. It runs off of the special chip that's both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. That's why you have to be in your house to use it, and that's why you have to be around your network to use it. Um, let's see. Do you like the Ecotech pumps versus the ones Apex offers? So I think the Vectra pumps are more powerful, Timothy. So for my system, I needed something more powerful. Um, and the the Neptune pumps are good. I just don't think they're as powerful, even though they're rated at around the same. These Vectras are much more powerful and smaller. So I really like the Vectras over the Neptune. Um, you can control the Neptune a lot better, of course, through the Apex. So it's a toss up for me. I went with Vectras because I can control them through my Reeflink, which I've had forever. Most of the time, I don't need to adjust the speeds on my returns. I just turn them off. Let's see. Scott, the Versa is only Bluetooth. So I'm just going to inform all of you that the chip that's inside them has both the ability to do Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Whether or not they turn that ability on or off is up to Ecotech. So the new chips have both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So right now, the way that it works is Mobius controls your Versa with Bluetooth to get it all set up and working. However, it then uses the Wi-Fi for the control. I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know how they're going to manipulate it, but that's currently how it works. Um, so eventually you'll be able to use it when you're not home. That's the whole key to the Mobius is being able to do what the Neptune does when you're not home. Right now you can't do that because they haven't enabled that ability yet, but it is there. Vinny, I don't believe they are going to allow the Mobius to ever work with the Gen 4 until they come out with a box such as the Reeflink. They're going to have to come up with a new box that controls all of their products. So it's going to be similar to Reeflink. And then the Mobius will control or talk to them to that box. That's the only way I think they're going to do it. Have you had any issues with Apex auto sensors? I think I need to change one out. Daniel, can you explain what a auto sensor is? I don't know what that is. Um, I love my Reef Link. How does the sound compare to the Ecotech? They are both super quiet, Tim. Both of them. Um, so, producer Reef came up with a really interesting question. Um, Again, right now, I don't know exactly specifically what you're asking, but the Ecotech Live system works off-site using Wi-Fi to the Reeflink, which is what Mobius is going to end up doing. But for the time being, since it's only using Bluetooth, you cannot do it from outside the house. There's no way to do it until they enable that. So I hope that explains what I was explaining. Um, for those that are kind of network junkies like myself, you can actually VPN into your own home and control whatever you want in your house, like as if you were home. That's a little more advanced, but if you guys are ever interested, look up VPN. If you have a router that supports it, you can turn on VPN on your router, and then your phone can connect to the VPN, which is in your home, and therefore the phone would then think that it is inside the house. So you can do it from outside your if you run Bluetooth on. That's correct, Tim. Too. That's a perfect idea. Vinny, I am going to believe what you said, and I'm also going to say I don't believe so. I'm going to have to ask Devin. He should be here to defend himself. I don't believe that you can control a Generation 4 with Mobius right now. You might be able to do it with Bluetooth, but it would probably be in some beta format that I don't know about. Um, Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that because it hasn't been released. I'm assuming there's a beta that can control certain things, maybe Bluetooth, but I don't know of Mobius being able to control any of the generation Radeons, at least right now. Um, the auto top off optical sensor. Okay, so how to test optical sensors, Daniel? It's actually pretty easy. Pop the optical sensor out, clean it really nice. Get a glass of water, pop it in the water, look at your apex. If it says that it's closed, then it's working. Take it out of the water. If it says it's open, then it's working. If neither of those happen, then you have a bad optical sensor. Make sure you clean it really nice. One thing with the ATK, which I'm assuming you have, is if you have it near or anywhere near any type of dosing whatsoever, it gets calcification, it gets all kinds of stuff on it, and the optical sensor doesn't work anymore. Clean it really good with some vinegar, see if it works that way. If it doesn't, replace it. Yes, Siraj, you can. If you have a computer inside your home, you can run an app on your computer and then VPN into your computer and control it that way. It's a little, it's a little difficult to do it that way, but it's possible and it works. Okay, so the Reeflink allows you to control the Radions, the Vortex, Vectras, basically lets you do whatever you want with any of their products, with the exception of the Generation 5 Radeon. It does not work with Reeflink. So you have to use Mobius, as far as I know, or plug that in. I haven't actually seen a Generation 5 working or being controlled yet, so I'm not 100%. Um, if you could just plug your computer in and program it like the old ones, um, it's just too new. I don't know much about it right now. Um, so I'm not going to go too much into the Reeflink, but I just wanted to go over the difference between a WXM controlled system and a Reeflink controlled system. Reeflink can be controlled anywhere because it's your device or your phone is controlling the box that's inside your house, which is what Mobius is going to have to do anyways. Um, all right, let's see if my pH went up at all. Now we're getting there, 7.85. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is one of my favorite products, which is the Samsung Smartthings products. Um, I'm going to do a shameless plug here. This is a product that I sell for a living, so I have a lot of what's the word? I don't know. I really like it. Let's put it that way. And I use it for my reef tanks quite a bit for multiple different things. There is a developments tool that we are not going to get into probably today. We won't have time. That allows you to basically have other systems control the SmartThings devices. For instance, like I said, I'm a home automation programmer, so I have a home automation system that controls my SmartThings. So I have things on my walls, I have buttons on my walls, I have fish tank things on my walls that control through my SmartThings. So I really like the product, and that's why I wanted to go over it because you could actually use it in your fish tank and save a lot of money. And that's another reason why I want to show you it. You know when the Samsung will give support to Apex like Amazon does? Okay, so Timothy, it does. It does through the development tools. Like I said, you have to have a number of other products to make it work, but it does. And we're not going to have time to go over it. It's a little bit complex, and I would love to show people how I do it, but that would probably be another hour that I would need. I'm learning this. I'm going to buy a Versa, and now I'm going to hold off until they turn the chip on. So, um, Brian, I say get a Versa. You can control it with the Mobius, and generally you're not going to touch it. So I would recommend just getting the Versa. So, so we're going to go through a couple things with the Smartthings. So Smartthings uses a hub. They have a Wi-Fi hub. Live stream tomorrow. They have a Smartthings Wi-Fi hub and they have a Smartthings regular hub. One, of course, is Wi-Fi controlled. One is regular controlled. It runs off of Zigbee, so all their products that they sell run off of Zigbee. But here's the great thing about the Smartthings is they have outlets. They have a number of outlets here. Okay. They also have a number of sensors. So here's all these different outlets that work with Smartthings. Okay. There's tons of them. So how I use it is, like I said, a little more advanced, but I'm going to go over just a basic thing that you can do with the Smartthings, which is really cool. So you buy the Smartthings smart plug, you plug that into a light in your cabinet, and then you buy a sensor. So they have a number of sensors here. They have an arrival sensor, they have a motion sensor, they have a contact sensor, they have a door window sensor. All these sensors that they sell will work through the Smartthings. So what this could potentially do in a very easy fashion is if you walked by your fish tank, you can have it turn on something. And then when you walk away, you can have it turn off. Neptune doesn't sell anything like this. So this is something that you can integrate separately outside of the Neptune world and do all kinds of stuff. So for instance, both of my fish tanks have door sensors on them on the cabinets. When I open the cabinet, my light turns on to my sump. When I close the cabinet, my light turns off. Very simple control, very simple automation, but very inexpensive and easy to use. They also have a water leak sensor, as you can see here. So you can get an alert on your phone if you were to have a leak. And this leak sensor costs a quarter of the price of getting a VD or getting a leak to sensor kit, FMM, and a leak sensor from Neptune, and plugging it into your Apex, which is $500. If you just wanted a leak sensor, here you go, leak sensor and a hub. You're probably going to be out $150 for both of those devices. So what's really nice about Smartthings is they have a number of sensors, number of cameras, all kinds of crazy things that you can control with the Smartthings. So all of these cameras will work with the Smartthings. So you can look at your fish tank. You could do all kinds of things. Again, Timothy's question was, how do you integrate the Samsung with the Apex? Well, there is a way to do it. However, it's very advanced, and like I said, I'm not going to have time to explain it. But I want to let you know that this is more of a separate system for basic stuff, like turning on a light if you walk by, or getting a leak, for instance. Very simple stuff. I wanted to show this off because I use this for very basic things that I don't need the Apex for. I don't need the Apex to tell me when my cabinet's open if I can go buy a $10 sensor and a hub and a switch for under $50. Why get all this crazy wiring and all this other stuff when this works just fine? So, to Timothy's point, there is a developmental tool that you can go in here and you can modify all kinds of stuff. You can modify how long the sensors are open for. You can modify, um, I'm trying to think what else. You can modify how it controls through your Apex, how long it controls, so you can have it turn off if you wanted. Let's say you have company over and people are walking by, you could turn it off for a period of time. You cannot do that normally. You actually have to go into developmental tools and program it. And again, I don't have time to do that. Yeah, producer Reef, I'm telling you, Smartthings is a quick and easy way to get some stuff done that the Apex would require either more expensive products or a lot of programming and weird things and wiring everywhere. This is all wireless. It works really great. You got to replace the batteries on the sensors, every couple months. Um, but yeah, they have all kinds. I mean, here's a door sensor. Here's a water sensor by Iris. All of these things work if you go to smartthings.com/products, they all work with the SmartThings hub. Of course, they have lighting bulbs. They have all kinds of crazy things. It also, of course, works with Amazon products. So, for instance, if I go out to my garage and I want to turn on the sump light, I can just say, hey, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say the name. Turn on my sump light, and it will turn on my sump light. So you get a little more control than the Apex in terms of voice control. But if you can integrate the Apex together like I do, you can have the Amazon turn on different outlets in the Neptune. So it's pretty neat. Door locks, thermostats. I mean, all of this stuff works with SmartThings. Security systems. They have Sonos, of course, that works with it. So I would highly suggest if you guys are looking around for just some basic control of like a light or something kind of cool that you want to have in your house with motion sensing, SmartThings is great. So I really wanted to just explain it and show you guys. Do they have a battery option for the UPS for the Apex? So, Producer Reef, I don't know if you've seen my streams on other like on Devin's stream or when I get a little more complex on Neptune's stream. But I use APC battery backups for all my DC pumps, even though they tell you not to do that, and it works just fine. So I plug all of my energy bars into battery backups, and that's how I do it. Well, Vinny, if you want to see my bragging rights, I will show you my bragging rights. There's a reason that I'm a control freak. I have 34 modules, and you got to consider the fact that I have probably 6 FMMs here, and considering all the flow sensors and optical sensors and all the crazy crap I have, I think I'm doing pretty good with bragging rates. That's why I started this channel because I have a lot of Neptune stuff. Yeah, Brian's trying to compete with me, so Brian one day is gonna beat me out. I think 48 is the top that you can have now. Neptune's gonna come out with another Trident. I don't care what they say. They're gonna come out with another control of some sort that monitors nitrates and phosphates. They're gonna come out with more meters. You know they're going to come out with a controllable pump to compete with the Versa. They're going to come out with some form of a peristaltic pump that's continuous. You know they are. We all know that they announced last week or this week that they're coming out with a light. So, um, we're going to need more modules on this thing. Brian, we're going to say I have 34. So, any questions on Smartthings? Any questions on Ecotech? Any questions on what we went over? We're getting to about an hour. I do have some critters coming this morning. That's what that doorbell was. So I got to go get to the front door to get my critters. Um, and I have to do that. I got some new stuff I'm putting in the tanks. Um, so any questions on anything we went over? I'm going to see if there's any other questions that I haven't got to. Let's see. Got some pretty good questions today. Like I said, I don't I don't like talking for an hour if I don't have questions because unfortunately I can't I can't talk for this long. So I really like everyone participating. It really helps me. Tim, I got some new urchins because I'm trying to get rid of some algae in my sump. Um, I got some more snails, just some little stuff, nothing major. Let's see, there's wise over that one. All right, so today I'm giving away a gift card to Bulk Reef Supply. So it's an electronic gift card, so you're gonna get it right away after the stream. Um, so whoever wins will have to PM me on Facebook and give me your email address. That's all I'll need, and I'll send it over to you. So I'm gonna pull up the contest right now, and we'll see if there's any further questions, and we'll go from there. Brian, Mobius cannot work outside of the house currently in its form. They're going to have to come up with something inside the house, some way to control their devices that are not Wi-Fi. Um, I think that since most of their products are Bluetooth, the Vectras, the MP4, MP series Vortex, and all of their Radions, they're going to have something inside the house that is a Bluetooth type device that controls the device and then you connect to it, such as the Reeflink. They have already mentioned that they're killing the Reeflink, so they're going to have to be coming up with something else. Um, I think they should continue to use the Reeflink and just update the software, but that's my own opinion because I already have one. But that's, unfortunately in our hobby, that's how they make their money is they come up with things to make us buy it and get rid of the old stuff. And that's why Neptune and Ecotech are no longer playing nice with each other because they're both creating products to compete with each other. And it's going to be hard for those two devices to control each other because now Ecotech has the Mobius, and of course Neptune has had Neptune stuff. So I'm assuming that Mobius is going to come out with some type of controller. It probably will have pH. It'll probably have temperature to compete with Neptune. That's my personal opinion. Okay, so need to look at the list, and if you don't see your name, you either didn't say anything in the chat or you didn't ask a question today. So, as usual, you have to be here. So, we're going to give the person that wins a minute or two to say something in the chat. And if they don't say anything, we are going to rerun the test. This has happened now 3 times. So, check the list. Make sure you're on there. If you're not on there, there's a reason. Either you didn't say what you were supposed to say, or you didn't ask a question. So, or I missed it completely. That's possible too. But I'm looking back at the chat to see who said the magic words. Let's see. Magic word. Magic word. Let's see. Yeah, Brian, I think the Kimura is a good piece. I really like it. I just think it's a little noisy. Um, so yeah, if you don't have your name up there, there's a reason you don't have your name up there. So, all right, we are at about an hour. So I didn't want to do this more than an hour today. So uh, I don't believe Jason, you ever asked a question. Unfortunately, do you have a question that you'd like to ask? Could be any question. It's just part of the rules. Like I said, I want to make sure I'm transparent and everybody gets a chance to be part of this. Um, I don't believe you ever asked a question in chat. I could be wrong. He just got here right at the end. So we were talking about, you can ask anything, but we were talking about calcium reactors, Smartthings, Ecotech, and everybody's waiting for you, by the way. Just letting you know. Well, it's a different stream. Oh, you guys are fun. I guess that'll count. So, Jason, I like Geo. If you're just doing a regular calcium reactor, in terms of automatic calcium reactors, the aquarium engineering one I have for price, I think is a great product. There's a company out there called Deltec that makes an automatic calcium reactor, but it's about triple the price. So, best bang for your buck, I would say I would still look at the automatic calcium reactor first and then look at regular calcium reactors like a Geo as your second best. Hope that answers your question. All right, everybody is ready now. Anybody not on the list? Last chance. Yeah, but Producer Reef, they don't make Vertex anymore, so I can't recommend it. If you can find it online cheap or something, yeah, buy it. But you're not going to. They're out of stock everywhere. Deltec has a lot more money than aquarium engineering. At least size for size, it is. All right. I think we're ready to go. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we got enough people. So, all right. I appreciate everybody that came today. We've got a bunch of new people. So, more the merrier. I can't wait to continue to have more people. We're going to keep doing some different things, different giveaways every week. I have something kind of cool for next week planned. Um, so I hope to see everybody next weekend, Saturday morning, same time. And yeah, here we go. The winner is Hatfield's Reef. So, Mr. Hatfield's Reef, if you are in this stream, please comment below, say you are here. Awesome. So go ahead and on Facebook, look me up. For those that don't know, my name is Derek Picker. And PM me your email address, and I'll get this over to you right away. So again, thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate all the support every one of you gives me. Please like the channel below. Invite all your friends. The more the merrier. Like I said, I continue doing these live streams because of you guys. If I don't have people in here to question or ask me questions, it kind of gets a little stale. So we're gonna keep going with this time morning on Saturday. Um, but I appreciate everybody again. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, please go ahead and subscribe. That way you'll get an alert. Make sure you hit the bell. You'll get an alert when I do my live streams just to remind you. And I do give away something every week. I plan on doing that for a while. I have a lot of stuff to give away. So please, again, thank you for the support. And everybody make fun of Desert Reef Aquatics. His name is Aaron Johnson. Make sure you continue to make fun of him as long as possible every time we have a stream. Anyway, have a good day, everybody.